The following information is drawn from various primary and secondary resources, i.e. DHS, ProRepublica, Star Tribune, Minnesota Reformer, which will be credited throughout the duration of this video. It reflects documented reporting and historical research, not the personal opinions of the IATA Leads organization. Minnesota has experienced an expanded federal enforcement presence led by Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security under an operation referred to as Operation Metro Surge. Public reporting has described thousands of federal agents deployed across the state in coordinated enforcement actions. In early January 2026, an ICE agent fatally shot a Minneapolis resident, Renee Nicole Good. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner classified her death as a homicide. A second fatal encounter later in January involving Alex Preddy intensified public concern and sparked widespread demonstrations. Public response has included large-scale protests and labor-backed actions. On January 23rd and again on January 30th, tens of thousands of people participated in demonstrations described as organizers as a general strike, drawing support from labor unions, faith leaders, and community organizations. Ongoing resistance has taken the form of community monitoring of federal enforcement activity, documentation efforts, and organized response networks. Online discourse has frequently described the federal presence as an occupation, and some commentators have compared federal enforcement agencies to historical secret police forces in Europe. These comparisons reflect fear and anger, but they can also obscure the longer history of how American institutions have responded to protest and political organizing.
ICE is not, nor is it inspired by, and why I say that is which was the secret police for the, and the were largely informed and inspired by the Jim Crow South here in the United States. There was already violent policing happening here in the United States, so much so that we literally inspired some of the worst modern day atrocities by perpetuating our own here in this nation.
To understand what's happening now, it helps to look at earlier moments when the state confronted organized resistance. Welcome to IATA's Corner, where diaspora women and new Americans shape the future. We're here to inform, inspire, and equip you to lead, engage, and transform with your community. Today, we're discussing parallels between the past and the future, and more specifically, what we can learn from Black history. Black history offers an interpretive lens for the present moment. The conflicts surrounding enforcement and protest in Minnesota reflect patterns Black communities have encountered during earlier struggles for civil rights. Understanding those precedents helps clarify both the state's response and the forms of community resistance that follow. Historical precedent for state repression during periods of social conflict can be found in the civil rights movements of the 1950s and the 60s. In cities such as Birmingham and Selma, local and state police have used force against nonviolent demonstrators demanding voting rights and desegregation. These confrontations were widely documented and vastly shaped national public opinion. Even in the face of sustained opposition from federal and state authorities, civil rights and Black liberation groups developed extensive community-based support systems. We begin with the multiple programs that the Black Panther Party developed. These include free breakfast programs for children, community health clinics, sickle cell testing initiatives, legal defense networks, and transportation networks for families of incarcerated people. Other prominent mutual programs include the Southern Christian Leadership Conference opening citizenship schools and community education programs aimed at increasing political participation, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee organizing freedom schools and voter registration projects across the South, the Congress of Racial Equality coordinating efforts and mutual aid alongside direct action campaigns, and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund utilizing courtroom strategies that combine legal advocacy with community protection. Similar forms of community infrastructure are visible in Minnesota today. Organizers have established legal aid and bail funds, rapid alert systems to warn residents of enforcement activity, childcare, and translation support for participants, mutual aid networks, and documentation teams. Through polarized times, these initiatives serve comparable functions, protecting vulnerable populations, sustaining participation, and building collective capacity. Forms of resistance have also evolved. During the civil rights movement, strategies included marches, boycotts, sit-ins, and voter registration campaigns. Contemporary movements employ marches and occupation-style protests alongside digital organizing tools, legal challenges, and real-time documentation of state activity. This historical perspective highlights recurring patterns in the relationship between state, power, and dissent. Governments have repeatedly framed protest movements as threats in order to justify expanded authority, militarized enforcement, and limits on civil liberties. Taken together, the events in Minnesota illustrate how present-day conflicts over federal enforcement echo earlier struggles over civil rights, state power, and community self-determination, not as direct repetitions, but as variations on long-established patterns in American history. Want to stay informed? Follow IATA Leads on our social media networks, sign up for our email list to get updates on events, and if you can, donate to support our work. Together we're building power and shaping the future. IATA, ouch.